JA Oil Company stands tall as a trusted name in energy, keeping the Gambia moving with service stations across the country and a commitment to innovation and reliability. In Farafenni, JA Group is reshaping our industrial landscape. The JA Oil Cement Factory can produce up to 100,000 bags a day, reducing imports, creating jobs, and building a stronger Gambia brick by brick. And in the heart of the Central River region, JA Farming Initiative is cultivating food security. With thousands of hectares under development and modern irrigation, JA Farming is turning the Gambia's soil into abundance. JA Group is more than a company. It is a vision of self-sufficiency, resilience, and progress. The JA Group of companies, investing in industry, agriculture, and energy, building the Gambia's future today.
A better way to pay your UTG fees with instant proof of payment and real-time student portal update. Paying your University of the Gambia fees has never been easier or more convenient. With Ecobank, students, parents and guardians can pay UTG tuition and related fees through our secure digital banking channels such as Ecobank mobile app, Ecobank Online, and Ecobank Omni Lite. Once payment is completed, instant proof of payment is generated and the UTG student portal is updated in real time, allowing students to proceed immediately with registration, course selection, and clearance without unnecessary delays, while giving parents and guardians peace of mind that payments have been successfully processed. How to pay via the Ecobank mobile app. Open the Ecobank mobile app and navigate to the home screen. Select Pay Bill. Choose Pay a New Bill and select Schools from the category options. Select University of the Gambia. Select the specific product you are paying for. Enter your matriculation number and tap Continue. Validate your details. The system will display the payable amount. Press Continue to confirm the payment. An e-receipt is generated automatically as proof of payment with real-time updates on the student portal. How to pay via Ecobank Online or Omni Lite. Log in to Ecobank Online and Omni Lite using your credentials. Select the menu and choose Bill Payments. Choose Quick Bill Pay and select School from the category options. Select University of the Gambia. Select the specific product you are paying for. Enter your matriculation number and tap Continue. Validate your details. The system will display the payable amount. Press Continue to confirm the payment. An e-receipt is generated automatically as proof of payment with real-time updates on the student portal. Walk into any Ecobank branch or pay through our digital channels and enjoy instant proof of payment with real-time updates on the student portal. Ecobank, the Pan-African Bank.
Sant yàlla.
looy xaar utal Wave nga scan nga fay nag doo ci yokk dara.
It's Monday, the 11th of May, 2026, and you're with Coffee Time with Peter Gomez. It's 18 minutes past 8 o'clock in the morning across the Gambia. Mayor Talib Ahmed Bensouda's Unite movement is positioning itself as a disruptive force in Gambian politics with bold claims of becoming the largest party before September 26 and 2026, I should say, and challenging President Barrow in December's election. Now, this makes his Coffee Time interview today a prime moment to press him on strategy, on credibility, and on national priorities. But it is also a chance to directly address Dr. Ismaila Ceesay's sharp criticisms, including claims that Bensouda prioritizes politics over service delivery and, what he was elected for by the people of Kanifing Municipality. Mayor, welcome back to Coffee Time with Peter.
Thank you, Peter.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
You had a good weekend?
Very good weekend.
Fantastic, yeah. That's good to hear, especially after the vitriol of, Dr. Ceesay's appearance on the program last Tuesday.
Well, I don't think what political opponents say bothers me the least.
Yeah. Well, he says you have, literally abandoned, your responsibilities in favor of politics. That's not nice to hear. I wouldn't like to hear that is the fact, because I know that our municipality, still faces challenges, and we need you to be, focused full on.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what I'm doing, fully focused on service delivery. Leadership is about delegation, it's about strategy, it's about working with people. Contrary to the belief of the minister, the mayor's job is not a laborer. It's about policy direction, it's about leading a team, it's about putting forward the vision, and that's exactly what we've done. Secondly, I think the minister is a bit confused. The Minister of Information is a role that's supposed to communicate government policy, communicate government plans, communicate government developments, and of course alleviate the fears of the people about the living wage, about the cost of living, about security, etc. Big challenges this country faces, but I think he focuses a lot on partisan politics and personal attacks, which is disappointing. I mean, I've said to myself I would not respond to such vitriol, to such petty, allegations and conversations, because that's not my style, and I frankly feel it's a waste of my time. But I do realize week on week I am a topic of discussion with this minister. I don't know whether it's insecurity or he has a complex.
What do you think? Is it insecurity?
I believe
Is it a question of complex?
I believe he wishes he was me.
Oh.
Because I am not appointed. I don't report to anybody. I don't lose sleep about being fired, because I can't be fired. I was elected into office by the people of KMC. So I don't have to serve a master. I serve the people. I don't have to please an individual. I serve the populace. So I think that's one. I am a two-time elected mayor, one with the ruling party when Barrow was with the coalition, and the other against the ruling party, against President Barrow and the Minister of Sports, where I doubled my vote and had a mandate.
President Barrow, explain that. I can understand.
Well, I mean, this is
the Minister of Sport.
This is an open secret, There was such a huge concern that if I win my re-election, I would likely go on to challenge President Barrow in the 2026 presidential election. And given my popularity, my rise at the time, this was a cause for concern. And the State House was machinating how to defeat me. When they couldn't find any formidable candidate, they got a minister of youth and sport who once contested against me and lost.
As an independent
candidate, but this time with the backing of the incumbent and government machinery. So they thought with his standing he could defeat me, and they failed again.
Yeah, nobody can argue against that.
Yeah,
we all saw that happen.
showing that, I have really delivered for KMC. The people had high hopes. The people trust my leadership. And so I think all of this bothers the minister. Secondly, I have just started a political movement. Within 6 months, we are one of the most formidable political forces in this country. And we intend to contest elections at every level, something that he's not been able to achieve as a party leader. Since he registered his party, he's not been able to contest any election, even an election he wanted to contest, which is presidential. Instead, he sold his party to President Barrow and now serves as President Barrow's personal, I hate to use the word, but puppet. I I think it's about time some of these issues I let the public know. But, I don't want to engage in personal back and forths. I've heard the minister come here, personally insult me, call me a liar, and say all sorts of things. So I have ignored as much as I could, but then I realized that this is an insecurity issue and he won't stop. Because every time he looks at me, he wishes he was me. So I think it's about time that, I said a little about it. And, I always say one thing, when you hire somebody into office, hire somebody with integrity. Hire somebody who at least, has a bit of pride, But, everybody has heard this minister call Barrow ignorant, uneducated, illiterate, doesn't know what he's doing, and now praises Barrow as a prophet.
He regrets that. He said on this platform
this is not about it's not about regret. It's about belief.
Now he knows what he doesn't know.
It's not about regret. It's not about belief. It's about principle.
Because there was a time when both you and Barrow also sang from the same hymn sheet.
But I never insulted President Barrow. Yeah, I never called him illiterate or ignorant.
When two people, are together, it's friendliness and friendly words.
It shouldn't be like that. Your stance with somebody should always be based on principle. Even when I was with President Barrow, I'm never one to come out and, sing praises, frivolously. And I've never come out to condemn him or insult him. I talk about the government and its delivery. I don't talk about his person. In fact, I do acknowledge that he's done some good things. But one thing I always lament on, that he should not go for a third term, because that would destroy this country and destroy his legacy.
But he should deal with the Constitution first and foremost. And the Constitution paves the way for him to keep standing for re-election until the Constitution says he can't.
Well, people make constitutions. Constitutions are not
exactly. Let the people change the Constitution. The people in the National Assembly.
And that starts from President Barrow. The political will starts from the president.
He could say that he sent a draft to Parliament that contained, term limit, and Parliament threw it out.
But, Uncle Peter, you've been around longer than I have. You have more, political history on your palms. You've lived through a lot of times. Basically, if President Barrow put forward a constitution to pass, it will pass. He put that constitution forward to fail, because what's convenient for him is the 2017, the constitution before that. What was the year again?
1997.
1997, not 2017. 1997.
Which is the one still in use.
Constitution, because that's the constitution that gives the president autocratic powers. And I always said, the dispensation of the president as a civilian, is only temporary. As pressures increase, as challenges increase, he would have to refer to the autocratic laws to get his way. And we've seen that. We've seen it over this weekend. And, I hope Gambians are starting to realize.
What happened this weekend?
Look at what happened to the Gala youths, and, look at what happened in the case of Usman Bojang. Look at what has been happening in Madiana, and this will continue to repeat itself. More people will be jailed. More people will be beaten. God forbid somebody is killed. I went to see the Gala youths over the weekend, and I saw remnants of the experiences we were feeling during the former regime. When I say remnants, is one, the police were super uncomfortable to even escort me as an opposition figure. You could see the fear. You could see the uncertainty in their eyes. You could see them.
Escort you to where?
To see the Gala youths. As mayor, I wanted to go see them, to see their condition, because we gave them an approval to use the youth monument, which we give weekly to different organizations. So if they're arrested for not having a permit, which is unprecedented and never happened, there's no time.
A permit from KMC would be recognized, approved, accepted by the state.
It's not a permit. This is a property of KMC that KMC rents out to different organizations, and they range from businesses to civil society to government to non-government. And in terms of non-government or non-for-profit, we do give it on gratis. The only thing we ask is that you clean it and you put cash power when you're done. So Gala was no exception. And in my history, in my time as KMC, and as far as the public record, there is no such time that KMC has rented out the youth monument or approved it for use where the individuals were asked for a police permit, unless in the case where there's a procession and that procession emanates from outside the premises of the youth monument. So it was appalling. It was
this not
shocking.
the case with the Gala youths? Had they not started their protest outside the
It's not a protest. Their letter said a celebration, annual celebration. You know, and in the same week we have given it out to the Gambia Women's Chamber of Commerce, Gambia Immigration Department, Gambia Boxing Association. You know, we like to support NGOs who wish to have.
So the immigration department had to write to you to seek permission to use the
They
place.
all write to us to seek permission, and if it's like I said, non-government or government, we give it on gratis. If it's for private use, we charge a fee of $10,000. So this is no exception. So we even give it to the UDP annually for the Solo Sandeng commemoration. You know, so it's a public space for public expression.
NPP never use it for anything.
Well, if they wish to use it for anything, they just have to write.
Have they written?
Well, they've never written to us.
Is that because they don't want to subject themselves?
I don't think they have a use for it, but
okay.
If they have a use for it, that's fine. So the reason I visited...
Is it the same arrangement with the buffer zone?
So the buffer zone is more of a public space. It's KMC's property. It is fenced, but because it's within a community.
You don't have the same authority over it.
No, we approve it. We
have
have the same authority. We approve it.
So if Barrow wants to have a rally there, they have to write to you to seek your permission.
Well, they don't write, but we don't mind.
Could you stop them?
He's the president.
If you wanted to stop
we are not
them, could you
interested
stop
in
them?
stopping him. They're the government, you know. So the basis of this was that, you know, I felt they were targeted. They were targeted for who they are. They are a anti-government pressure group or looting of assets. You know, they are anti-corruption pressure group. So I think they were targeted because of their past history with government, but that should not have been the case. I think it should have been an issue of dialogue, an issue of communication, because if they even had called the council and asked, why have you given this platform to these people, for what reason, and we could explain. There was no need for force, the use of force. The police culture...
And what was out, you know, days before that they...
Yeah, it was out.
To have this event there.
Course.
So if the police didn't want it to
they
happen,
could have contacted us.
They could have just cordoned off the whole area.
Yes, or they could have contacted us. They say, look, you have given this platform to these guys, because I saw the letter almost a week and a half before the event.
What was out? Because
so
they wrote to all the media
could have
houses.
engaged us and said, KMC, you've given this platform to these guys, but we have credible information that they're going to do violent acts, or they're going to destroy properties, or they're going to do A, B, C, and D. And if we also agreed with the evidence, we could have rescinded the approval. So why wait until the actual day and brutalize them? You know, you see the images and throw them. So it shows that police culture hasn't changed.
Yeah. Even the National Human Rights Commission has
condemned.
condemned.
So basically what I'm saying is, when I visited them, you know, I noticed two things. There were, you know, a lot of police with arms. You know, I witnessed a truckload of armed police, you know, coming down from the truck.
Armed with guns
with armor,
or batons?
tear gas guns, you know. And I understand the police station was surrounded the day before, even by the army and Ecobank, you know. So,
really?
Yeah. So basically, I read the faces of these officers, and I saw two types of officers. You know, the leadership that was basically uncertain of my presence, a bit scared, very worried about who's watching them. And that was a cause for concern for me. Because
the army was there because of your presence?
No. I think the army was there the day before because they felt the youths would come and, you know, assault the police station, meaning people who came to free their comrades. You know, but the other faces I read were of officers ready to fight. You know,
ready to fight who?
Exactly. I saw how they were operating and how they were preparing, and then it just reminded me that police culture hasn't changed. And Peter, remember, Uncle Peter?
No, it's all right.
You know,
it's
remember
okay.
the last interview I had here, I told you, if there's no reforms, this country will regress to what it was. You know, as President Barrow is more adamant about going for.
But we have an ongoing security sector reform.
Well, I'm telling you, and this is a warning. I hope every Gambian can hear me. There was a time where Yahya Jammeh allies became victims. There was a time where the former president's enablers became victims.
Even his own family members.
Exactly. So there was a time here in this country where we started regretting that we had empowered a government that should have left after its mandate was over, and then we became victims of that government. And those times are coming back.
Okay. Let's go back to, for us here, the reason why you are here, how you balance your role as KMC mayor with your role as Unite Movement for Change leader. Because that seems to be, at the center of what the minister said about you. That you're spending almost all your time.
It's bogus claims. I have been the organizing secretary of the biggest political party in the past years, which is the United Democratic Party. I was the organizing secretary, head of campaign for 3 years while I was mayor and delivering and winning my re-election. So being a mayor... It's
different from building a party from bottom up.
I was an organizing secretary.
It's one of the reasons why Barrow says he can't leave now, because if he were to leave, the NPP might die.
So it's different. So, it's almost the same, so I was the organizing secretary of UDP, organizing its organs, etc., building the party, though it was an established party. But I had a huge responsibility. With the Unite Movement for Change, it's not just me building it. I am a key leader and an interim leader. However, there's many people building the UMC from scratch. But that's not that doesn't matter. What matters is whether I am running KMC effectively, and I am. I am there during working hours. But as mayor, I use the power of delegation. I use the power of basically setting out the vision and coaching. It's like we said, our administrative structures, mayors are not the chief executive officers or the city managers. We have chief executive officers and directors. So they do the day-to-day running of the council. Mayors focus on policy, they focus on bylaws, they focus on the vision, and of course supervision of the directorate. So, like I said, it's a lack of understanding of what political leaders do. Okay. You look at President Barrow, he's out every week. Almost every day, he's out doing some level of politics. Does that mean that President Barrow is neglecting his
inaugurating
duties?
roads and all of that?
That's
how it's officially packaged.
But we know it's an NPP rally. Okay. Some of these roads were built 5-6 months ago. So
until now, Unite officially is just an idea. All right. It's not a legal entity yet. Until, as far as, its relationship with the IEC is concerned. How do you react to suggestions that organizing congresses before full registration violates electoral law?
I think it's misplaced. I've read the electoral law in and out, and the sections the IEC chairman referred to. He referred to Section 105 of the Constitution, which I think he's acknowledged that was a mistake, because that talks about parliamentary language. It doesn't talk about anything to do with electoral laws. In terms of the Elections Act 2025, he mentioned 105, Section 105 to 110. But, I don't know, conveniently, or maybe he forgot, but there's Section 104, which is actually the first law, the precedence to Section 105. So what that says is people have the right to establish political parties for the sake of advocacy and for the sake of to shape the political landscape. Now, Section 105 says starts talking about registration. If you wish for IEC to recognize your political party, then you must meet certain preconditions for registration. So you can actually exist. So this is what many Gambians don't understand. Or it's seldom said. Political parties can exist without being registered. And I think something like this can be clarified by the Supreme Court.
Okay. So why is registration necessary then?
So registration is to be regulated. If you wish to contest under that party's name, or you want your candidates to contest under that party's name, you must be recognized by IEC, or your party becomes an advocacy for independent candidates or an advocate group for other parties. Now, the IEC also says if you want to be part of people who are monitoring voter registration or at polling agents during election day, maybe polling agents during election day, candidates can put their agents. But for registration purposes, you need to be a registered party. And this is why the UMC, we plan to be a movement. We did not plan to be a political party. But when we recognize that to actually have agents at registration centers, IEC will only allow political parties. This is why we started the registration process. Okay. Because we know elections are usually rigged at the registration centers.
Is that where they're rigged?
That's where they're rigged, yeah. So when the former regime accepted to change the law for spot counting, as far as you have agents at every polling station, you know the number of polling stations, votes are counted on the spot. It's very difficult to rig at that level. But at the registration centers is how you shape the game before you enter the fray.
So what's the update on the registration of
United
Movement for Change as a political party?
So we've been to the IEC almost every week at some level or the other to check on the status.
Is that the usual thing? That you go in and out, to get
we didn't know this was even happening to other parties, but when we talk
it has happened to other parties?
So when we talk to other parties, they say, even back in the day, this is how it was, etc. We talk to some parties who feel that there's foul play. But, we put in our registration December 1st. And then, of course, there was fanfare, etc. UMC always does it differently. Mm-hmm. And, of course, we got a response 2 months later, which was quite public, but unusual. IEC usually deals with parties quietly until they're registered, because registrations cannot be denied. They are guided. It's a right. It's not a privilege. But we were taken aback when the IEC came out publicly to say, 8 political parties have been turned back, and then UMC was the actual headline. UMC, and so we felt that was targeted and that was planned. We were quite upset about it. We felt that was a move to discredit us, and then, we went back to the drawing board. We asked them, why have you returned our registration? So they quoted several reasons. The biggest is wrong use of party name. For example, you're registering a party called Unite, but many people have put UMC in the forms. So those forms, which affected thousands of signatures, were discarded. Then there's the issue of the administrative area. So the administrative areas legally are Kanifing, Mansakonko, Janjambure, but some of our agents put KMC or BAC or, MKAC. They use council names. So that affected thousands of forms. They also said to us that they have done what they call a social verification, and certain names that were put in the list were known supporters of other parties. So those were eliminated. They claim that, in 1 or 2 cases, somebody put a name of somebody who was not alive. So these are normal issues. Okay, now out of these forms we have put forward, how many are valid? They said, you guys said you brought, almost 20,000+ to 30,000 signatures, but 7,000 are valid. Okay, then give us back those 7,000 so we can top the rest. That didn't happen.
Oh.
So that was a cause for alarm.
Is it normal to get,
Of course. You have 30,000 signatures. Okay. Yeah. Okay. We are a new political platform. The experience is not there. We're doing it the first time. We are trusting people to help us get this process, and we are disappointed by many. Some are genuine errors, but most are genuine errors. Which is the nomenclature. Now, you should return the 7,000 so we can top it up.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. They say, if you want to register, start again from scratch.
Oh, wow.
We sort of realized we had a big mistake. We did not scan or photocopy any of the forms because we trusted the process. Right? What should be so complicated about registering a party? I think the concern should be about contesting the election and competing in the election, but not to register a party. That's a simple formality and administrative process. So we started again, but this time, of course, the movement had grown much more. We had opened bureaus, we had people on the ground. So though the first time took a bit more time, it took us, I think, 1 month to get those signatures. The second time took us 1 week to get those 10,000 signatures. But this time we were more deliberate about it. I filled forms personally. Ibrahim Adiba, you saw him on social media. Our leaders were on the ground ensuring that the process was credible and was done properly. So in 1 week, we generated a fresh 11,000 signatures. But another thing I failed to mention, from our initial engagement, which is December 1st, we did not get a response for 2 months. We didn't get a response for 2 months. Then we said maybe there's 8 parties, because they said 8 parties. We said, okay, we can understand, because they responded to 8 parties at the same time. However, other parties told us, well, our application has been sitting with them for 5 months, or 6 months, or 4 months.
Oh.
So why should it take that long? And this is a constitutional requirement of the IEC to register parties. You must have a dedicated unit and dedicated staff whose only job is to ensure people who pay the fee, meet the requirements, have the ability to register. So why should it take 5-6 months?
So you've restarted the
So
process.
we restarted the process. Yeah. It took us 1 week. We put in another 11,000 signatures. And then, of course, we were racing against time. We want to have this done before the voter registration, because we need people on the ground. That is the first step of any electoral process and the most important step. So by this time, it was February. We were 2 months away from voter registration. They did not get back to us, until about a month later. We started getting agitated because we started going there and saying, what's going on? They got back to us and say, well, we are preparing for voter registration. We don't have people on the ground, but we have a team looking at it. They're looking at it. Then they got back to us once again and say, okay, can you correct, few of these signatures? They're mistakes. So we got them extra, I think it was 1,800 signatures. But this time they had known that we had scanned all our documents. So they knew. So
they gave you back,
yes,
those
the ones that they
signatures,
felt that they are problematic. Then we of course replaced those within 2 days, 3 days, because now we have structures in every ward in this country, every constituency. So with a phone call you can get signatures very quickly from supporters. So then again they said, oh, there's still 500 that have an issue, but we had already oversubscribed and kept those in case there was any errors. So we replaced those within an hour or 2.
Okay.
So now that has been almost 3 weeks. And we were always telling them, look, we want to participate in this voter registration process. But we always had a plan B, and that was to work with other parties. So we have been able to work with APP Sobea and have agents in every registration center around the country. But we would have rather our party be there. So when we gave that, now every week is, we are busy with registration. We are out. We are busy. We are doing other things.
But they are busy with registration, aren't they?
But that's not an excuse. If your mandate, right, is to register political parties and to officiate elections, all these units must have dedicated personnel whose full-time job is to register parties. If the issue is you don't want many parties to register, revisit government, look at the thresholds for party registration, whether it's the fee, whether it's the number of signatures, whether, make the requirements more stringent. Or do an audit of existing parties and, parties who don't meet the requirement, move them out of the way.
Okay.
So basically, we don't want to quickly jump to a conclusion and say foul play. We've been taking their excuses, because frankly, when we go there, we see a lot of, issues they have. But at the end of the day, it's getting to a point where us leaders have to speak out, because we have frustration with all our supporters, locally and abroad. Why is this taking so long? Why are they dragging their feet? There's so many theories. Many believe there's executive interference.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Which would undermine,
the whole electoral process, and also undermine the credibility of the IEC.
Absolutely.
And Gambia is a very small society. We hear a lot of things. Somebody even told me, I think last week, that they were at the State House, and one of the political advisors told him, we will never allow Unite Movement to register.
Really?
And I was like, really? He said, yes. I said, well, we'll see.
Advisor to the president?
Advisor to the president. Somebody told me this is what the advisor to the president told them.
Oh, wow.
So...
Is it somebody you know?
Somebody I know. So it's...
But somebody you're not ready to mention publicly?
No, well, in politics there are rules, and you can't do that unless I had a recording which I'd play for you on this, So basically, like I said, it's a small country. It's an interrelated country. You never know who you're talking to. I always assume that whoever I'm talking to may go next day to President Barrow or opposition parties and tell them. But I am one.
I will not do that.
I am never afraid.
I will not do
I'm
that.
Never afraid
You're talking to me now. Huh? You're talking to me now.
But we hear a lot. We don't want to jump to any conclusions. But I would urge them to do the right thing.
Okay.